Hi friends, Prepared Suburbanite here, back for part 2 of my series on SHTF threats, scenarios. What I plan on doing in this is exploring some of the threats that we face based on kind of different priorities, different categories of threat level assessments. So stick with me. Okay, as we're talking about different shit hits the fan threats, different scenarios that we can realistically face and that we may very soon be facing on a realistic basis. And it doesn't matter who's president or who's in charge. So the first general category that I'm going to put the threats in are personal. Now, these are personal kinds of threats that we all face every day. A job loss, a divorce, loss of a loved one, being diagnosed with a fatal disease, cancer, diabetes, kidney disease that requires dialysis, a stroke, a heart attack. Boy, I'll tell you, that can be a devastating kind of a scenario for just about anybody. You can have a house fire. It may not burn to the ground, but you might have significant enough damage that could really cause quite a lot of scenario-based threats. Broken pipes, backed up sewer systems, those kinds of things. A flood in your home, a flood in your basement, broken water pipes that ruin your kitchen floor, that do all kinds of damage. Hopefully, you've got liability insurance on your property, and you've got a deductible that you may have to pay, and you got to go through the inconvenience of rebuilding and repairing and all that. But that can be an extraordinarily stressful situation. An auto accident. I mean, yeah, sure, you can total your vehicle, and you may come out of it with very minor injuries, cuts and scrapes, that kind of a thing. But now you don't have a way to get to work. Now you don't have a way to get to the store. You don't have any transportation at all because your vehicle's totaled. And then you got to go through all the red tape and paperwork with your insurance company to try to get the loss settlement done, get the estimates in, have them approve it through their red tape and bureaucracies and the insurance companies, and then end up finally getting a check, and then you got to go out and buy another vehicle. And yeah, okay, so that can be extraordinarily stressful. You can be a crime victim. You can get robbed. Your home can be burgled. You can be the victim of a home invasion. That can be a real personal disaster when those kinds of things happen, mentally and physically. You can experience repossessions. May lose your home because you lost your job and you don't have the income to pay your mortgage payments. You may lose your car. You may lose your appliances because you bought them on credit through Sears and Roebuck or wherever you got them. That can be extraordinarily stressful. And a personal disaster like that can really cause havoc. And are you ready for that? Are your insurance premiums paid up? Do you have the right levels of coverage? Do you have the deductibles and co-insurance and co-pay amounts saved up and ready to go? That's part of being prepared. So the next level up, a little bit more devastating, I would think, are what I'm going to refer to as regional disasters. And I'm going to define a region as your neighborhood, maybe your city, maybe your county, maybe even your state or a section of your state that you live in. You can be a flood victim. I've been there. I know what kind of devastation a 100-year flood can cause. There can be fires, forest fires, woodland fires, that can cause tremendous amounts of damage. You've read the reports about the stuff going on in Colorado and the stuff going on in California during the droughts, and they ended up with tremendous woodland fires and forest fires. People were losing homes. The devastation lasted for years afterwards. A major snowstorm, maybe not quite as bad, but right now, it's my understanding that the Northeast, New York City, Boston areas are preparing for anywhere from 18 to 24 inches of snow. And it's the middle of March. Oh my goodness. Loss of power, loss of transportation, inability to work, could have some economic impacts. Yep, that could be one of the kinds of threats that you need to be prepared to face. Earthquakes. Yeah, it does happen. We had one here in Wake County just a couple, 3 years ago. Wasn't very big. Kind of shook the buildings a little bit and all that. Kind of unnerved people. Folks from California laughed at us, but it can happen. And there are fault zones running right through North Carolina. There's some in the Midwest. There's a lot certainly in California and all along the Pacific coast. So it's a real dangerous threat. And do you have a plan to be prepared just in case you're a victim of an earthquake? There's also tornadoes, major hurricane storms like that can really cause all kinds of damage and knock power out, rip roofs off of houses, kill people, do all kinds of damage, knock out economic centers. And are you prepared for that? Other considerations from a regional perspective, chemical plant incidents. Right here where we live in North Carolina, there's a number of pharmaceutical companies, there's a number of chemical plants, there's a number of plants that use very dangerous type of chemicals in their manufacturing processes. And if something like that was to go haywire, well, there could be groundwater contamination, there could be air pollution, there could be all kinds of contamination going on with those kinds of scenarios. And do you have a plan to deal with that? How about a nuclear power incident? Well, I can remember 3 Mile Island, and I can certainly remember the Chernobyl incident and what happened in Fukushima. We've got a nuclear power plant right here in our backyard, the Sharon Harris nuclear plant, and it's had a couple of technical problems. Yeah, they were a little nervous for a while, but they found out what was wrong and they got it fixed and all that. But heck, if one of those things decides to melt down, yeah, we've got a big problem. And do we have a plan to deal with that? Well, those are very specific kinds of plans. And depending on which way the wind's blowing, all depends on how much time you've got to enact that plan. There can be acts of terrorism on a regional basis. Just kind of thinking, the Boston Massacre, even the World Trade Center kind of a bombing, that was regional. It happened either in Boston or in New York City. Folks in Kansas City, folks in Panama City, Florida, yeah, they heard the news, but they weren't affected by it one-on-one. Now, they may have known people that were, and it does help to personalize those kinds of things, but dirty bombs, terrorist activities, those kinds of things on a regional basis can be a situation, should hits the fan threat, that you do need to be prepared for. And lastly, on my list of regional stuff to consider, are epidemics, flu outbreaks, measles, mumps, polio, meningitis. It does happen, and they do get regionalized, and the outbreaks can be contained, but there can be an awful lot of damage done in a small area over a short period of time when an epidemic does hit. So if we move up to the next level and we start talking about national threats that can be of a shit hits the fan nature, I'll just kind of read down through the list and I'll let you think about how this is going to affect you. A civil war. Left versus right, Republican versus Democrat, progressive versus conservative, black versus white, religious groups fighting with each other, that kind of a thing that really do and can cause a real for real civil war. We've had them. Yep, wasn't that long ago. I don't remember it, thankfully, but it certainly is in the history books. We also face the potential of a coup d'etat, a forcible government overthrow, an insurrection by different factions within the citizenry. And that can happen. Can be related to civil war? May not be. But that exists as a possibility. Reactions to those kinds of things? The enactment of martial law. Well, what happens when martial law is enacted? All your constitutionally guaranteed rights are pretty much all thrown right out the window. So you talk about a dangerous kind of a threatening situation, that's it right there. There can be an enemy attack. There can be foreign countries, foreign groups, caliphates that decide, okay, today's the day. We're going to launch against Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Miami, you name it, New York City, Boston, Dallas. I don't think there's a city that's really safe from those kinds of threats. And when you're talking about an enemy kind of an attack, we don't know what kind of form that's going to take, but it can be quite devastating. A pandemic. Now, those kinds of things, we read an awful lot about the threats of pandemics. And they have occurred in the past. There was in 1918 the influenza outbreak right after World War I. Certainly the Black Plague from back in the Middle Ages wiped out millions of people. It's because they didn't have the medical facilities, the trained medical personnel, and the experience dealing with pandemics that hopefully we have today. But if the grid's down, if communications are down, if transportation is down, and folks can't get to work, nurses and doctors can't get to their offices and to the hospitals, how are we really going to battle a pandemic? Something to think about and something to plan for. A grid down event on a national basis. Now, could be rolling brownouts that we've experienced in the past, could be related to local technical failures, computer mess-ups, technical folks pushing the wrong button, Homer Simpson style. But that's a real threat. There's enough research that's already been done that really exposes how vulnerable the U.S. grid really is to any kind of an error, mistake, or foreign threat. We could be subject to an oil embargo. I can remember in the 70s, there was an oil embargo going on there. I can remember sitting in lines at the gas station to only be able to buy 5 gallons or 10 gallons of gas at a time. And you had to wait for an hour in your car in long lines at the gas station. It was amazing. And things were being rationed. I'm not sure how well that would go over today, but that's a national kind of a threat that we can all face. And do you have a plan to deal with that? We could be subject to trade sanctions. I mean, imagine what it would be like if China said, we're not going to send you anything anymore. Sorry. You've gotten us so angry with you that you guys can just go away. We're not going to sell you anything. We're going to stop our ships from delivering merchandise to the U.S. shores. My goodness. Have you been anywhere where you can't find something that was made in China? That could have a huge, huge devastating effect on us. Trade sanctions from places that the United States relies on for fresh fruits and vegetables in the winter. South America, for example, there could be trade embargoes that they can impose that could restrict the flow of those kinds of fruits and vegetables to our shores, and we'd have to figure out a way to deal with that. And do you have a plan? And certainly a cyber attack, whether it's of a economic basis or whether it's from a security or defense standpoint, where they could infiltrate computer systems, the defense systems, the U.S. government systems, the power grid systems, those kinds of things. I think we're very, very vulnerable in those areas. And then you've got the global threats, the global shit hits the fan kind of scenarios. And these are the ones that usually make the best themes for disaster type movies. Supervolcanoes. Yep, Yellowstone can go crazy at any particular point in time. You know, you always read that, oh, it's well overdue, it's well overdue. Well, it may be very well overdue, but if it goes and it truly is a supervolcano, that will be a global catastrophe. And can we plan for something of that magnitude? How about a worldwide grid down event, where it's not only just us that doesn't have power or access to transportation or electricity or water, but it's the entire world. Could be caused by a CME, could be caused by any kind of a nuclear type of strike that could just have that ripple effect across the globe. It may be very, very difficult to survive in a situation like that. Biological attacks. Well, we've heard about them. We've seen them. Anthrax, poisoning in our water systems, you name it. I think maybe if I was a terrorist, I'd be thinking about that may be a better way to do it than to grab a couple AR-15s and start shooting up a gay nightclub, but we'll see. Worldwide pandemics. The plague could happen. Could be man-made rather than natural. There could be some kind of bio-warfare thing going on that could affect or infect the entire world population. We could be subject to a comet, asteroid, or meteor impact. Ask the dinosaurs how they made out. And then, of course, you've got the conspiracy theorists that are out there, polar shifts, Planet X, Nibiru, those kinds of things, alien invasions and all that. Well, you know, I guess there's a tiny, tiny, tiny chance that something like that could happen, but will the rest of your preparedness prepare you for that kind of a scenario? We'll see. And then you've got biblical Armageddon kind of a thing where heaven knows what's going to happen there. But there's a lot of groups that are calling for and keep predicting that the biblical Armageddon is right around the corner. And it could be happening right now. We could be living in the end times. Who knows? Well, some of them are fanciful, some of them are real. But the real issue is, are you prepared well enough to be able to eke out a survival and thrival situation should you be faced with one of those threats, whether it's personal, regional, national, or global? In my next video, I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about what you can and should be doing for each one of these kinds of situations. So stick with us. This is the Prepared Suburbanite reminding you to be prepared always. And I'm out for now.